adopted a child, but recently discovered that their biological parents were notorious criminals. I never thought I'd find myself in this situation. It all started 5 years ago when I adopted Emily, a beautiful, bright-eyed little girl who had been in foster care for too long. At the time, I was in my early 30s, single, and finally in a place where I could offer a loving home to a child. I had always wanted to adopt, and after the heartbreaking loss of my own mother to cancer, I decided that there was no time like the present. I was ready to give a child a chance at the life I had been fortunate enough to have. I remember the day we met. Emily was 8 years old, though she looked younger due to her petite frame. She had this cautious but curious look in her eyes as she slowly walked toward me, clutching a stuffed bunny close to her chest. It was like she was trying to decide whether she could trust me. I immediately knew she was the one. Her smile, though shy and reserved, melted my heart. I promised her then that I would protect her, love her, and give her a home where she would always feel safe. The first few months were tough. Emily had been through more trauma than I could have imagined. She was withdrawn, often flinching when anyone raised their voice, and it took a long time for her to open up. But we built trust little by little. I attended therapy sessions with her, took things at her pace, and gradually I saw the walls around her heart come down. She was becoming the daughter I always dreamed of. But everything changed recently. It was an ordinary Thursday evening when I received a call from an old friend, Mark. He and I had been close since childhood, and though we'd drifted apart over the years, we still kept in touch. He had been working as an investigative journalist for the last decade, and I always admired his work. However, I never expected the call I got from him that night. "Hey, I'm sorry to bother you," he began, his voice unusually tense. "But I need to talk to you about something important. It's about Emily." My heart dropped. "What's going on, Mark? Is she okay?" "She's fine, physically, but I found something that I think you need to know. You might want to sit down." At this point, my mind was racing, trying to figure out what could possibly be so serious. "Mark, just tell me." "There's something about Emily's biological parents, something you should have known before you adopted her. They were involved in some pretty dangerous stuff. I'm talking about serious criminal activity, organized crime. Her biological father was part of a notorious gang. He's been on the FBI's most wanted list for years." I was silent for a moment, trying to process what he was saying. This couldn't be true. I had never seen anything about Emily's past that would indicate any of this. Mark continued, "I know this sounds crazy, but I've been digging into her history for a project I'm working on, and I found solid evidence. Her mother, well, she was no angel either. She was heavily involved in drugs, and she's serving a sentence for a variety of serious crimes. Emily's been living under a fake identity her whole life, and you never got the full story when you adopted her." The world seemed to spin around me as I sat on the edge of my couch, trying to hold myself together. Emily's past was haunting her in ways I couldn't have imagined. Her parents, the people she had no memory of, were criminals. What did that mean for her? And for me? I didn't want to believe it. It was all too much, too sudden. But Mark assured me that he had the evidence to back up his claims. Court records, police reports, even confidential informant testimonies that linked Emily's parents to a long history of violent crimes. "You need to tell her," Mark said, his voice softening. "She deserves to know the truth about where she comes from. It's a part of who she is." I felt a cold pit form in my stomach. Emily had already been through so much. Did she really need to know this? What would it do to her? What would it do to us? I didn't sleep that night. I sat awake in the dark, turning over the dilemma in my mind. On one hand, I knew Mark was right. Emily deserved the truth, no matter how painful it might be. On the other hand, revealing her biological parents' identities could destroy everything we had built together. The trust, the love, the life we had shared. I couldn't help but feel like this was some kind of betrayal. If I told Emily about her biological parents, would she hate me? Would she feel like everything I had given her was a lie? Could I ever look at her the same way again? The next morning, I decided to confront Emily. She was sitting at the kitchen table, reading a book, her little face soft and innocent. I sat down beside her and placed my hand gently on hers. "Sweetheart, there's something important I need to talk to you about." She looked up at me, her big brown eyes full of trust. "What is it, Mom?" I took a deep breath, my heart racing. How do you tell a child that the people she never knew, people she probably never thought about, were criminals? But before I could say anything, the doorbell rang. I froze, relieved but also annoyed. Who could it be at this hour? Mom, Emily asked, sensing the tension in my voice. Are you okay? I nodded quickly. Yeah, just a moment. Stay here, okay? I stood up and walked toward the door, my mind still a storm of confusion. I wasn't ready. I couldn't do this yet. But I didn't have a choice. The truth was coming for us, whether I was prepared for it or not. When I opened the door, I was face to face with a woman I didn't recognize. She was tall, with dark hair and sharp features. She seemed oddly familiar, though I couldn't place her. And then it hit me, her eyes. The same dark eyes that Emily had. I'm sorry to intrude, she said, her voice calm but urgent. I need to speak to you about your daughter. I stood there, stunned, staring at the woman who seemed to know more about Emily than I did. For a moment, I couldn't speak. The strange familiarity in her eyes was unsettling, and my mind raced with questions I wasn't ready to ask. Who are you? I managed to say, my voice trembling slightly. How do you know my daughter? The woman took a step forward, her gaze never leaving mine. I'm someone from her past, someone who knows things about her that you don't. We need to talk. My heart began to pound in my chest. I glanced back into the house, where Emily was still sitting at the kitchen table, oblivious to the tension that had just entered our lives. The woman's presence sent a chill through me, an unfamiliar chill I couldn't shake off. Please come in, I said, stepping aside to allow her in. I wasn't sure if I should be more frightened or furious, but I had to know what she was talking about. I had to understand. She walked into the living room, and I shut the door behind her, glancing one last time at Emily to make sure she was still safe. I could feel the weight of the situation pressing down on me, but I kept my composure. Who are you? I repeated, my tone sharper this time. And what do you want with Emily? The woman sighed, looking as if she was considering whether or not to speak. Finally, she met my gaze and said, I'm her aunt, her biological aunt. My name is Sarah. The words hit me like a slap. Her aunt. How could this be? Emily had no family left as far as I knew. Her biological parents had both been gone from her life for years. How could this woman just walk into my home and claim to be her aunt? Her aunt, I repeated, barely able to process what she was saying. That's impossible. She doesn't have any family. That's what you were told, Sarah said, her voice filled with an almost sad understanding. But there are things you do know, things I can explain if you'll let me. I was speechless. I had spent 5 years raising Emily, believing that she had been abandoned by her biological family, that she was a child with no ties to her past. And now, this woman was telling me everything I thought I knew was a lie. Please, I said, my voice strained, tell me what's going on. Sarah took a deep breath and sat down on the couch. I followed her, keeping a cautious distance. She seemed calm, but there was something in her eyes, a flicker of regret, maybe even fear, that I couldn't ignore. 5 years ago, when Emily was placed into foster care, Sarah began, her biological parents were already long gone. Her mother was arrested for drug trafficking and her father, well, he's been in and out of prison for years. But there's more to it than that. They were both heavily involved in a violent crime syndicate. They were dangerous people, and they did things that left scars on Emily, on me, on everyone around them. I felt a lump form in my throat as she spoke. I had never imagined that Emily's biological parents had been involved in such dark, criminal activities. I had always wondered why she never talked about them, why there were so many gaps in her history. But hearing it from Sarah's mouth, it all made sense in a way I wasn't ready to accept. You're saying that Emily's parents were criminals? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Sarah nodded, her face grim. Yes, but there's more. Emily was supposed to be part of a life she had no place in. Her parents wanted her to be a part of their world, a world of lies, betrayal, and violence. But when they were caught, Emily was left behind, forgotten. She was put into foster care, and I tried to get her out of there, but the system failed her. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I fought them back. This woman was telling me that Emily had been abandoned by her own flesh and blood, left to suffer in ways I couldn't even imagine. And yet, she had still found a way to survive, to thrive, despite everything that had been thrown at her. Why are you telling me this now? I asked, my voice tight. Why didn't you come sooner? I couldn't, Sarah replied, her eyes darkening. When her parents were arrested, I tried to get custody of Emily, but the authorities blocked me. They told me I was too close to the criminal activity, too connected to their world. I had no choice but to stay away. But now I'm here because I've learned something that changes everything. Your daughter is in danger. My blood ran cold at the words. Danger? What kind of danger? Emily had already been through so much. What could possibly threaten her now? Why would anyone want to hurt her? I asked, my mind spinning. She's just a child. Her parents weren't just criminals, Sarah said softly. They were involved in something much bigger, a criminal organization that still exists. And now that they're gone, the organization wants revenge. They know about Emily, and they won't stop until they get her. I felt my stomach twist in knots. I had always thought that adopting Emily had been the right decision, that I was doing the right thing. But now I was faced with a terrifying reality. The family I had built, the life I had carefully crafted, was at risk. And all because of the past that Emily had no control over. I won't let anyone hurt her, I said, the determination in my voice stronger than I felt. I'll protect her. I'll do whatever it takes. Sarah looked at me with a mixture of sadness and gratitude in her eyes. I believe you, but it's not just about protecting her from criminals. There's something else you need to know, something you might not want to hear. What is it? I asked, my heart racing. The criminal organization is still watching her, Sarah continued, and they won't stop until they find her. They know that she's the key to taking down everything her parents built. They want her back, and they will do anything to get her. The room felt suffocating. My mind was racing, trying to absorb what Sarah had just told me. The words criminal organization kept echoing in my head. My first instinct was to protect Emily, but the weight of Sarah's revelation was making everything feel like it was slipping out of my control. How do you know all this? I asked, trying to steady my breathing. How can you be sure they're after her? Sarah paused, her eyes narrowing as she seemed to gather her thoughts. I've been keeping track of the organization ever since I got out of that world. After her parents were arrested, I wanted nothing to do with it. But you can't just walk away from a life like that. It follows you, even when you think it's gone. I've been hearing rumors, whispers in the shadows, about a plan to get Emily. They see her as the last piece of their empire. I sat there, absorbing the gravity of what Sarah was saying. Emily, my little girl, the one I had spent years loving and protecting, was now the target of something far beyond what I had ever imagined. I had to do something. But what? How could I keep her safe when this danger came from a place I had no knowledge of? What do we do now? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. How do we protect her from something like that? Sarah's expression softened, but it didn't ease the tension in my chest. The first thing you need to do is talk to Emily. She's old enough to understand. You can't keep this from her forever. She deserves to know the truth, even if it's hard for you both. My heart sank. I had never imagined I would have to tell Emily that the parents she had never known had been dangerous criminals. She had already been through so much, and now I had to add this burden onto her shoulders. But I knew Sarah was right. Emily deserved to know. She had a right to understand the danger she was in, even if it shattered the fragile peace we had built together. I glanced at the door leading to the kitchen, where Emily was still sitting. She had no idea what was happening, no idea how her life was about to change forever. I felt a pang of guilt in my chest. Could I protect her from this truth? Could I shield her from the terror that was slowly closing in on us? I'll talk to her, I said finally, my voice shaking. But I need you to help me. I don't know what to do. I don't know how to keep her safe. Sarah nodded, her eyes hardening with determination. I'll do whatever I can, but we have to move fast. The longer you wait, the more danger Emily will be in. The organization isn't going to wait around while you figure things out. The weight of the situation was becoming unbearable. My daughter's past was catching up to her, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I felt a deep sense of helplessness, like I was being dragged into a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I stood up, my legs feeling weak. I'll tell her now. Sarah followed me to the kitchen, her presence a silent reminder that the danger was real, that we were running out of time. Emily looked up from her book when she saw us enter, her expression bright and innocent. But I knew the moment had come. I had to tell her, and I had to be strong. Sweetheart, I said, my voice cracking slightly, there's something very important we need to talk about. Emily looked between me and Sarah, her face shifting from confusion to concern. What's going on, Mom? Why does she look so serious? I knelt down in front of her, taking her small hands in mine. Emily, I need you to listen very carefully, okay? There are things about your past, about your real parents, that you need to know. Her brow furrowed in confusion. What do you mean? I thought you said my real parents weren't around anymore. I took a deep breath, feeling my heart break a little more with each word. I know you've been told that your parents left you when you were very young, but the truth is, your biological parents were involved in some very dangerous things. They were part of a group of criminals, and they did bad things that hurt a lot of people. I didn't want to tell you this because I wanted to protect you, but now, we have to face it together. Emily's eyes widened in shock. What? No, that can't be true. I nodded, my chest tightening. It's true, sweetheart, and that's not all. There are people out there who want to hurt you because of what your parents did. I've been keeping you safe, but now we have to be more careful than ever before. She looked up at Sarah, then back at me, her face full of fear and confusion. But why didn't you tell me before? Why now? Because we need to face it together, I said, my voice soft but firm. I love you and I've always wanted to protect you. But the truth is, you have a past that's catching up to you and we can't run from it. We have to be brave. We have to face it and we'll do it together. Emily was silent for a moment, her small hands trembling in mine. Then slowly she nodded. I don't understand, she whispered. But I'll be brave, Mom. I'll do it with you. Tears welled up in my eyes as I pulled her into my arms. My little girl, so strong despite everything, was going to face the truth, and I would be there to guide her through it. We'll get through this, Emily, I whispered into her hair. I'll never let anything happen to you. But even as I said the words, doubt lingered in my mind. How could I protect her from something so big, so far beyond my control? Sarah spoke up from behind us. We need to move quickly. The people who are after Emily, they're dangerous. They won't stop, and I don't want to put you or her in any more danger. I pulled away from Emily, my mind already spinning. What do we do next? We lay low, Sarah said. We stay off the radar, and I'll help you contact the right people to protect Emily. But we need to be careful. No one can know we're involved in this. I nodded, the weight of the decision settling on my shoulders. Our lives would never be the same. And from this moment on, every step I took would be for her safety, no matter what it cost me. The days that followed felt like I was living in a constant state of alertness, as if every corner I turned, every sound I heard, could be a warning. Sarah became a constant presence in our home, offering advice on how to stay off the radar. But even with her guidance, I could feel the walls closing in. Emily seemed to take it all in stride. I couldn't help but admire her strength, though a part of me hated that she had to grow up so quickly. We continued with our normal routines as best as we could, but everything felt different now. The simple act of leaving the house, the innocent moments of laughter, they all carried an undercurrent of fear. Mom, are we really in danger? Emily asked one night, her voice quiet as she sat beside me on the couch. I looked at her, her small face full of confusion, and my heart broke all over again. She shouldn't have to worry about these things, not at her age, but the reality was inescapable. Yes, sweetheart, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. But we're going to stay safe. We'll be careful and we'll face this together. She nodded, though her eyes betrayed her uncertainty. I don't want to be scared. You don't have to be, I reassured her. I'm here with you. We'll get through this, I promise. I knew I couldn't protect her from the truth any longer, but I could shield her from the worst of it. I would keep her safe, no matter what it took. But even as I said those words, a deep, gnawing fear clung to my chest. I had no idea how long we could stay hidden, how long until those people came for her. I had no way of knowing how far they were willing to go. Days turned into weeks. We moved between different houses, sometimes at night, sometimes during the day, never staying in one place for too long. Emily was growing tired of the constant upheaval, but she didn't complain. She kept close to me, as if my presence was the only thing grounding her in this chaos. And then came the phone call. It was late one night when the phone rang, its shrill tone cutting through the silence of our temporary home. I glanced at Sarah, who was sitting across the room, her face tight with worry. We both knew something was wrong. No one we trusted should be calling us at this hour. I picked up the receiver, my hand trembling slightly. Hello. There was a long pause on the other end, followed by a voice I didn't recognize. You don't know me, but I know you, and I know who your daughter is. My stomach dropped. The words sent a cold shiver down my spine. "Who is this?" I demanded, my voice steady but my heart racing. "I'm someone who knows the truth. About Emily, about everything, and I can help you." I glanced at Sarah, who was now standing, her eyes narrowing as if she could sense the danger. "What do you mean you can help me?" I asked, my tone sharp. "Who are you?" The voice on the other end let out a small laugh, though it was laced with malice. "Let's just say I have ties to your daughter's biological family, and if you want to protect her, you'll need to meet me. There's much more to this than you know." I felt my blood run cold. "Where do we meet?" The voice gave a location, an abandoned warehouse on the edge of town. "Come alone," it said. "If you bring anyone else, the deal's off." I was shaking, but I knew this was our only chance to find out more. I had to go. I had no choice. "Okay," I said, my voice barely audible. "I'll come alone." I told Sarah what happened. She was immediately against the idea of going alone, but she knew there was no stopping me. I had to protect Emily, and this was the only lead we had. I left a note for Emily, telling her I'd be back soon, though I knew she wouldn't understand the gravity of the situation. I kissed her on the forehead before I left, and though she asked where I was going, I simply told her I'd be back in a few hours. I didn't want to scare her more than she already was. The night was quiet as I drove toward the meeting spot. The air was thick with tension, and I could almost feel the weight of the past closing in on me. What had Emily's biological family gotten her into? What was this criminal organization willing to do to get her back? The warehouse loomed ahead in the distance, its silhouette dark against the starless sky. I parked the car a little ways off and walked the rest of the way, my breath shallow with nerves. When I reached the entrance, the door creaked open, and I stepped inside. The space was empty, save for a few scattered crates and broken machinery. A single light flickered above me, casting shadows along the walls. I didn't see anyone at first, but then I heard a voice from the far corner. "Good to see you came alone," the voice said, rough and gravelly. I turned to see a man emerging from the shadows. He was tall, with dark eyes that seemed to pierce through me. His face was partially obscured by a hood, but I could tell he wasn't here to make friends. "What do you want?" I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. "What is all this about?" The man stepped closer, his expression unreadable. "You want to protect Emily, right? You want to keep her safe. I can help you with that, but it's going to cost you." "Cost me?" I echoed, my heart sinking. "What do you mean, cost?" "You know the organization won't stop until they get what they want," the man said. "And the only way to keep Emily safe is to get rid of anyone who might try to protect her, including you." My breath caught in my throat. "What are you saying? I'm not going to let them hurt her. I'll do whatever it takes to keep her safe." The man smiled darkly, revealing a hint of satisfaction. "That's the problem, isn't it? You've already made yourself a target." Before I could react, the sound of footsteps echoed behind me. I spun around, and there, emerging from the shadows, was a familiar face. It was Sarah. "Sarah," I gasped, confusion and betrayal flooding me all at once. "What are you doing here?" She stepped forward, her face calm, but I could see the glint of something darker in her eyes. "I'm sorry, but this was the only way," she said softly. "I had to make sure you understood just how deep this goes." "What do you mean?" I demanded, my heart pounding in my chest. "You've been helping us, you've been protecting Emily. Why are you doing this?" Sarah's expression was cold now, almost as if she were a completely different person. "Because I'm a part of it too, and I've been trying to protect you from the truth all along." I stood there, unable to process the words Sarah had just spoken. You're part of it. All this time, you've been helping them." Sarah didn't respond immediately. She simply watched me with cold eyes, like someone watching a stranger, someone they no longer recognized. I felt a rush of betrayal so intense that it took my breath away. The man who had been lurking in the shadows gave a small, knowing laugh. "You were too trusting. That's the problem with people like you. You think you can save someone, that you can protect them, but you never really understand what you're up against." Sarah's eyes flickered briefly toward him, then back to me. "You don't know the full story, but I'll explain it now. You need to understand why I had to do this." "Why?" I spat, my voice sharp with anger. "Why betray us? Why protect people who hurt innocent lives? Why put Emily in danger?" "Because," Sarah began, her voice low, almost regretful, "I was born into this life. I didn't have a choice. The organization, the one your daughter's parents were involved in, they run everything. When I left, I thought I could escape, but they kept pulling me back in, kept using me. When I saw Emily, when I realized who she was, I thought I could keep her away from it, keep her safe. But there's no escape. Not for her, not for me. I shook my head in disbelief. And now, you've decided that the only way out is to throw us into this nightmare. Is this what it takes to stay alive? Sarah looked down, guilt clouding her face. I tried to protect you, but the longer you kept her away from them, the more danger we were in. They knew who she was. I had no choice but to play the part of the protector for you to make you trust me. All this time, I've been trying to keep Emily alive, but they'll never stop. Not until they get what they want. The room seemed to close in on me, my chest tight as I realized the magnitude of what Sarah had just confessed. She wasn't just an innocent ally trying to protect us. She was a pawn in a dangerous game, and she had been playing both sides all along. So what now? I asked, my voice trembling with frustration. What am I supposed to do now that I know the truth? You're telling me this organization is too powerful, that they'll never stop chasing us, and now you're just handing her over, like it's the only option. Sarah's expression hardened again. I'm not handing her over, but you need to understand. The only way you can truly keep her safe is to leave. Go somewhere far away. Don't try to fight them. Just go. Because if you stay, they'll come for you, they'll come for Emily, and they'll destroy everything in their path. I stared at her in disbelief. Run? You expect me to run? To just leave everything behind and disappear? She nodded solemnly. It's the only way, and even then I don't know how long you can hide, but it's your only chance. The man behind Sarah stepped forward, his eyes glinting with cold amusement. It's true. The sooner you leave, the better. They're already on their way. You'll have to move fast. A chill ran down my spine. We weren't just playing a game anymore. This was survival. And Emily, my sweet little girl, had no idea what was coming. I turned to Sarah one last time, my heart breaking. I trusted you. Her face softened for a moment, regret flashing in her eyes. I'm sorry, I never wanted this. I wanted to protect you both. But there's only so much I can do. I'm not a hero. I'm just trying to survive. I felt a pang of sadness for her, but it was quickly replaced by the cold, harsh reality of what we had to do next. There was no turning back. No more pretending everything was going to be okay. I had to keep Emily safe. I had to protect her, no matter what. It didn't take long for us to make the decision. I couldn't trust Sarah anymore, but I also couldn't ignore the fact that she was right. Our only option was to disappear. We packed only the essentials, things that could keep us hidden for as long as possible. No one could know where we were going, not even the people who had helped us before. Emily didn't understand why we had to leave, why we had to go on the run like criminals. She kept asking why we couldn't just stay, why everything couldn't go back to normal. I did my best to comfort her, to tell her it was just a temporary thing, that we would be safe again soon. But deep down, I knew the truth. We would never be safe. Not unless we kept running. The organization wasn't something you could escape from once you were in it. And no matter how far we went, they would always be one step behind. We didn't have a plan. There were no safe houses, no hidden allies. There was just the road ahead and the hope that we could outsmart them long enough to start a new life. I thought about everything we were leaving behind. Friends, family, a life that felt stable, even if it had been built on lies. As we drove into the night, I held Emily close, my heart heavy with the weight of all the decisions I had made. I knew there would be no going back. There was no safety net, no guarantees that we would survive this. But as long as I had Emily with me, I would fight to protect her with everything I had. And if it came to it, I would die trying. Months later, we were still moving, still hiding, still running from the shadow that was always one step behind us. But something had changed. Emily had grown stronger. She was no longer the frightened girl I had once known. She had become resourceful, capable, and aware of the stakes. In the quiet moments, I sometimes caught her staring out the window, lost in thought, her face a mixture of determination and sadness. She knew, deep down, that we couldn't keep running forever. But as long as we were alive, we would keep fighting. For each other. For the future we hadn't given up on yet. And that was enough.